My Grandpa Joe and Grandma Helen lived on a corner in the heart of Mechanicsville, Virginia. And from their kitchen window, located just above the sink, you overlooked Lee Avenue and straight on up Atlee Road to the Five Corners. And that was on the Five Corners. There was the old the Rebel Inn Bar and Grill, Mr. Gammon's Garage, Producer's Co-op Feed Store, Winter's Insurance Agency, and Mr. Heath's Radio Repair Shop. Now there was a short cast iron bracket lamp mounted to the cabinet beside that window that made it easier to wash dishes, especially at night. But that simple, unremarkable lighting fixture occupied a special place in my youth. If it was turned on, which it nearly always was, someone was at home and awake. And I knew I could stop in at my grandparents' if I saw that light burning. I could stop in for a visit or a meal or just a warm hug. Now, granted, I didn't stop in frequently, but seeing that light and knowing that I would be welcomed there was a blessing I can only now fully appreciate. I remember driving my grandparents home from a family event after dark one night. We entered the back door of the house and stood in the short, narrow vestibule while Grandpa Joe took the key off the top of the breaker box where it lived always. And he opened the door and he said, "Y'all wait here while I make a light." And instead of reaching around into the breakfast nook next to the door for the overhead light, he walked the 4 steps across the kitchen, the dark kitchen, to the sink and turned on the window light as if to say, "Hey, we're open for business." And I never really thought much about Grandpa's quaint expression of making a light until I got to know my father-in-law, Peter. Now, Peter's extensive research of and collecting of early lighting gave me a much better understanding of what was involved, even in my grandfather's youth, in creating illumination, in making a light. Matches, wicks, flint and steel, tinder, paper spills, banked coals. Light was something that literally had to be made. It was not taken for it wasn't the taken for granted practice of flipping a switch and having immediate access to light like we enjoy today. Making a light was a very deliberate and purposeful undertaking in my grandfather's youth. Deliberate and important. And it always has been. In today's gospel lesson, John tells us that God loves us so much that he sent Christ, the light of the world, into the world that we might shun the darkness and live in that light. And this was the same light that was in the beginning intended to be the life of mankind, a light that darkness could not overcome. But apparently, not everyone would come to the light, and neither were they compelled to do so. God gave man the ability to choose whether he would live in the light or die in the darkness, whether he would live in truth and honesty, exposing his deeds to the scrutiny of God and his neighbor, or hide his malice and greed in the shadows of darkness and evil. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that there are only 2 kinds of people in the world, good and evil. That's that's really an oversimplification. Because there are actually three kinds of people in the world: good, evil, and undecided. And a lot of us live in that third category. We indulge ourselves in both good and evil, putting our big toe into one or the other to test the waters. We wade into the joy of selfless and charitable works, and then we justify criminal activity just because we consider it victimless since nobody got hurt. We help our neighbor get his ox out of the ditch, and then we steal his cart because, well, there's no way he'll ever know that we did it. We work politically to benefit the underserved in our community. Then we revile and curse those who don't agree with us. We tout religious and patriotic ideals that we neither understand nor believe unless they can be reduced to a bumper sticker. The choice for light or darkness is ours to make. And somehow, in this life, many of us never get around to making it. Because true goodness and true evil are palpable forces detectable by even the most underdeveloped and inexperienced souls. You know what I'm talking about. When you're with a person who just makes you feel joyful and safe and content. Or when you meet a person who produces the opposite feelings in you: fear, dissatisfaction, gloom. When either happens, you can be fairly sure that you're in the presence of someone who has made their decision. Light or darkness. And while many of us never decide, Christ encourages us to live fully in the light. His desire is for us to live unafraid, unashamed, and unencumbered by any darkness. And when that happens, when we are immersed totally in the light, we become beacons to others. A welcoming reminder that we are here for them. And we welcome them into our warm kitchen and our loving embrace. For when we live wholly in the light, we need fear no darkness because it cannot overcome the light. And it doesn't even have a place to start. We can become comforting beacons, like my grandparents' light in the kitchen window. We can welcome and love simply everyone, not just into our church, but into our lives and our communities and our homes. But we cannot let it be conditional. Our love for people cannot be dependent upon who they voted for in the last election, or whom they love, or how they prefer their pronouns, or what part of the world they were born in, or whether they are obnoxious and irritating, or whether they're living in a world all their own that disappeared for the rest of us 50 years ago. My Virginia family, well, they're fairly certain that I'm one of those leftist liberal lunatics. But I'm not. It's just never quite that simple. I mean, I'd own an AR-15 if Governor Cuomo and my wife would let me. And I believe that dignity is a vital part of what it means to be human today. Dignity. And when we deprive anyone of dignity through unemployment or poverty or lack of medical care, disenfranchisement, loneliness, or any of a number of human conditions that our wise leaders debate so abstractly in terms of dollars and cents. When we deprive anyone of dignity, we make them less than human. And we, let alone one person, should not be able or willing to do that to another unless we've made the decision to live in darkness. No, I'm not a snowflake. I'm sorry, not a snowflake. I'm what the church calls a servant minister. Just a man of God who strives for the light, a man who works at making a light, like Grandpa Joe, that others might see and find their way. The choice is ours. The light of Christ or the darkness of evil and inhumanity. Think about it. Just think about it. The choice is ours. And for that, thanks be to God.